Hello everyone, this is Brian from Make It Studio, and welcome to this very first episode of Get to Market Radio. Before we move on to this very first episode featuring Mealhero, maybe I should take a second to pitch this brand new show. So basically, there are tons of new press articles every day talking about startups raising millions, which is great in a way. But we never really talk about all the shit you need to get through as a startup founder to reach that kind of milestones. And more specifically, we never talk about how these successful founders got their idea and went from the idea stage to their first fundraising. Why does that matter? Well, the answer is pretty easy. The vast majority of startup founders give up their startup idea at that specific stage because they cannot reach their first fundraising. Now, we don't like campaigning at Make It Studio, so we've decided to come up with two solutions to that specific pain. So first of all, we recently launched Make It Capital One, a unique investment fund dedicated to idea stage tech startups. So that basically means that we are allowed to invest in tech startups as early as the idea stage. So you don't need the product, you don't need revenue, the only thing you need is a sticky note where you write down the pain you have identified and the solution you believe is the right one. There will be a link below the video if you want to learn more about our application process. And of course, we have decided to launch Get to Market Radio and invite amazing founders who are going to tell us how they built their first product, how they acquired their first customers, and how they convinced their very first investors. Today, we're very lucky to have Jeroen from Mealhero with us. So since the beginning of the journey in 2017, they've raised close to 4 million, they tripled their revenue every year, and they went from 3 buddies to a team of more than 30 amazing people. And the road to get there, it was just incredible. Crappy MVP, more than 700 Tupperware-like demos, Kickstarter campaign, and first fundraising. Jeroen will tell us everything. All right, now it's time to move on to this first episode. And I really hope that you guys will enjoy it. Peace. Jeroen, so maybe can you just introduce yourself? Not really talk about Mealhero now, but just you. We want to learn more about you.
Well, cool. Now, so my name is Jeroen. I'm one of 3 co-founders and CEO of Mealhero. I'm 30 years old. I grew up in a family food business, so I'm 3rd generation in a family business in food and manufacturing and so on. So ever since I was able to walk, I literally walked into food manufacturing, kitchens and so on. So I think it was like written in the stars that I would end up in food or food tech on my own. I've also worked into the company of my parents before joining Mealhero, and was really there that I started to see the struggles, as in, hey, why does it have to be so hard to eat healthy, and why does it need to be so easy to eat unhealthy, and why can't you just bring the two together? So yeah, I launched on Mealhero in end of 2018, roughly, together with my co-founders Anton and Steven, who are 2 incredibly smart, incredibly talented engineers who handle all of our tech. And yeah, we've grown the business from 0 customers to a few 10,000.
Wait a second before you give us that kind of, KPIs.
Okay.
What's the pain you guys solve with Mealhero?
Yeah, I think the pain we really try to solve is eating healthy and easy in the same way. We have the vision to bring a personal chef to every home by building a platform that makes it incredibly easy to enjoy tasty, healthy meals at home, so that we can make the easy option the healthy option, and vice versa. So that's what we do in a very short nutshell.
So that's the pain. And what about the solution? What's your solution to this particular pain?
Yeah, indeed. Well, the solution that we have is that in order to eat healthy, easy, tasty, personal meals, you need a personal chef living in your house together with you and your family, who takes care of everything. But of course, pure in practicalities, that's quite hard. But that's nevertheless the vision that we reflect ourselves on. So what we've built is a platform that consists of 3 different components, 3 different products in one, which is a smart cooking oven, which is able to cook any meal by the touch of a button. So it's really, really, really easy. And we home deliver freshly frozen meal kits, which are all prepared, pre-seasoned and so on by our chefs, so that you have to do is simply scan, steam and press start, and it's time to savor your meals. We also have a smartphone application that works as a sort of the personal chef in your pocket gets to know you, what you like, don't like, and then really the whole platform starts to work as a personal chef for you and your family. I'll go to our website. That's always fun to share, so that I'm sharing like things that people really can see. So if it all should be going well, you should be able to see my screen. So I'm on our website right now, and what you see here is our smart steam oven in action. So it's like a really cool Apple-like device, which is a countertop kitchen appliance. You place your freshly frozen ingredients in, place on the lid, press start, and 20-25 minutes later, there's homemade fresh foods at the dinner table.
Nice. We need that at the office at least.
Yeah,
because we work in
the same thing.
so late.
You definitely need it at the office.
Is there like a promo code we can get, or?
We'll share it later on.
Nice. And when did you launch?
That also differs depending on what does launching mean. We came up with the idea, so like the light bulb moment was somewhere like summer 2015. So that's like almost 5 years from now, more than 5 years ago. We then launched the business, as in went out on our own. We quit our jobs and so on in 2017, early 2017. And then we sold our very first meal. So customer number one, marked at dollar number one, was somewhere end of October 2018. So I like to point out that was the official launch, because then we were really a business and not just three guys in an apartment working on some cool stuff.
Okay. So basically, in roughly 3 years, you guys grew from three co-founders to a team of 30 people, right? Mm-hmm. You told me that you tripled the revenue every year.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, and raised 4 million. So that's pretty good KPIs.
I believe so, yeah.
It's pretty awesome. I want to hear about this, the light bulb moment. Can you take us back to, tell us the story of the idea?
Yeah, well, I think it's a pretty fun story which tells a lot about who we are as a team of co-founders. So Anton, Steven, and myself, we've actually been friends since 2013. So we're almost a group for 10 years almost. So we've known each other for that time. We went to school together. So we were in the same classroom, we became friends, not so much during class hours, but mostly, in extracurricular activities. We became friends, so on and so forth. We went on a small holiday to a festival in Hungary, which kind of sounds like Hungary, so that's fun. And there on that festival, we already worked for like 1 or 2 years in our normal day jobs. We started to complain to each other. So we were like 23-year-old guys living in city centers, complaining about why do stores close so fast, like a takeout and takeaway. It's cool, but I'm kind of sick of eating $15 hamburgers every day. My cooking skills aren't amazing. Why does it need to be so hard to eat healthy food? Why can't it just be something that does everything for you? Me having grown up in a food business, I naturally started to think like there needs to be a food solution. Anton and Steven, Anton with a real passion for making hard things really simple, and Steven as a software engineer with a passion for making like really generic things really personal, came up with the idea, well, like there needs to be something that does everything for you. And then there we came up with the idea of a smart cooking device, home delivered food and so on. But that was still the very first day of the festival, and we were there for 4 days. So the entire festival turned out into like a big brainstorming session. We're like into
instead of it was Balaton Festival, right?
Yeah, it was a Balaton.
Balaton became hackathon for a weekend. Okay.
Yeah, indeed. So in between like performances, we started talking to each other like, hey, it needs to be frozen, so it's much healthier. Oh yeah, cool idea. And like, when we drove back with our cars, like the entire driveway home was like a big brainstorming session. We stopped along like a local brick and mortar store to buy like some first materials to start making our first device. So that was like the first light bulb moment.
Cool, great, interesting. So you had one, so from three of you, one is a software engineer, the other is like more like electronic engineer, right? Mm-hmm. And you were more like business profile.
Yeah, with industry knowledge, right? Because he comes from a family where...
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you get this idea, and then what's next? How do you make sure that this idea makes sense? That there is a need, that people are going to buy that, because it's super complicated in hardware, supply chain, food, frozen stuff, not frozen. So many questions to ask. So before we go into details, so just how you make sure that it's a good idea.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's a really good question, but it's a hard one to answer. How we try to validate is if it's a good idea or not is basically through persistence. First off, we started talking to some of our friends and so on, like, hey, do you have this problem as well? And yeah, maybe like a little, yeah, sure, whatever. And you start to fall into like this sort of more or less self-fulfilling prophecy that you're looking for people to tell you like, yeah, that's a great idea. But most people were like friends or family who really weren't like very honest and didn't dare to say like, guys, this idea, it's not gonna work. And when we start to talk like to real business guys, people with experience into foods or hardware and so on, they all told us, you're really clever guys, just pick another idea. This company is way too hard to get off the wagon. It's hardware, it's software, it's supply chain, it's consumer, it's marketing. It's so complicated. Don't start it. It's a terrible idea. But again, we by that time we've had fallen in love with the idea so much that we were like, we're still gonna do it. We also did like some short marketing surveys with some friends and colleagues and family to get insight into how much time do you spend in the kitchen, how much time ideally would you like to spend in the kitchen, and so on. So instead of like focusing into is our idea a good solution, we kind of went one step beyond
was there any competitors by then or not at all?
Sorry?
Were there any competitors at that point?
Yeah, it was like today the food space is crowded, but back then it was really crowded as well because you had like I don't know if people remember, but like 2014, 2015 was when like companies like Deliveroo, Takeaway, Take It Easy, and so were really up and coming. It was really crazy. You saw guys with orange bicycles and so on driving around. So traditional meal kits were also really up and coming. So that was also like a reason why most people told us like, don't start this business. But we really tried to get a sense of, is there a problem in the markets? And we found that nevertheless, although it was a crowded space, that there was indeed like still some hunger left in people, like it needs to be easier. And then we tried different solutions to that problem, and we fine-tuned and pivoted toward a solution that we really saw like, okay, this actually could work. This has the potential to really change something in the food space. And then we started working on it.
Okay. So you get the idea, you ask like, which is like a basic market research, asking people if it's a great
really
idea or
basic.
not. Usually doesn't work because people are not honest enough, right? And then you start working on the idea. So how did you get the first product ready? What was the first MVP or product?
Yeah, I think that the first product, well, we're extremely fortunate to have a really talented hardware electromechanical engineer in our founding team. So the first thing we ever bought was like the cheapest 3D printer you could find online. So we bought and we started building the first prototype of our device, or something that we thought could look like the smart oven, because that's only like 30% of our platform, but it was definitely the hardest part to get up and running. So he really took care of that, and then we started working on it. It was something that we could show to people like, hey, it could look like this. Don't ask me how it works because it doesn't. But I think that we had like the very first prototypes very early on. So we're like end of 2015, so 3 or 4 months after the first light bulb idea. But they were really ugly, really unsafe. Only the 3 of us could use it on Saturday nights to like showcase it, but definitely not ready to release into other people's homes. But then was like the first tangible product that we had.
Okay, so you get this product. So you were lucky enough to have someone in the founding team who had the skills
to build that MVP or prototype, which is not
How,
always the case.
how much does it cost though to build that first prototype? Because from what I'm hearing, you have an idea, you validate that basically through surveys, through connections, right?
on instinct.
Which, as Ryan said, people are too nice, or they don't want to give you the truth, the hard truth, which is I don't really care. So it's not really validation at that point, but you are perseverance. So you continue working on that. You say, okay, now we got to show what it could look like. But then you got to actually build it so you can actually showcase it and actually give food to people. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So what's that? How long was that process? Yeah. And how much money did you burn by then, you think?
I think it did the very, very first prototype, but once again, that's something that it was really, really, really ugly and it was super glued together and so on. It worked as in we could make one meal for the three of us once, and then the thing fell apart again. But then, a few months later, when we were like in the phase that we could actually have a somewhat working prototype for other people to use as well, so like our first 20 customers behind the radar and so on, took us still about a year. I think it was really a big challenge for us in that time so now we're like late 2015, early 2016, which was also like the up and coming period of startups, at least in Belgium and the Benelux area and so on. You had a lot of companies really booming. It was also like the time that, I don't know if people remember this, but like Snapchat was really big and they had like this really big valuations and so on. So we were like, hey, we're cool startup guys too. We should just go to an investor and he will give us like so much money so that we can start building this company. But that proved to be really hard. Especially when you don't have a product and you don't have revenue and the only thing you have is, hey, I have this bumper sticker, I have this idea, was really hard to do. I think we were stuck in for like at least 12 months. This was also in the time when we were still working full time, and this was like a side project we did during night times and weekends and vacation periods. Was in a sort of vicious startup circle wherein you have like three components. One, you need revenue, but you can't get that revenue without the product. And you can't get that product without your first investment. And you can't get that first investment without your first revenue. So it was like everywhere we went, like, if you could just show me 10 euros of revenue, I'll invest. I can't because I don't have the product. Oh, then I can't give you the investment.
This is what we're going with Make It Capital. That's really what we want to.
Indeed. So then eventually we tried to hack our way out of it, and we're okay. We need to have an MVP of our product. It's going to be too expensive to launch the entire business. Like we want, we need a really basic version. So what we did is we started making a few steaming devices on our own, which we were able to give to friends and family and tell them like, hey, if there's some money, like €5 per meal that you want to give us, just give us. We'll be more than happy. We'll deliver everything to your door. So like the unit economics were pretty terrible. But again, that wasn't a KPI that we didn't even consider at that time.
At that time, you're selling the device or you're selling meals?
Mm-hmm. At that specific time, we were selling meals, and we were basically giving the device because the device was something that we, super glued together in our own apartments and so on. So it looked pretty terrible. You could use it for like 5 times in a row and then it would fall apart, but at least you could use it 5 times. So that means 5 meals.
So you already had like recurring customers, like every month they would give you some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed. So that was something that was really important. Like, although the device only works 5 times, and then one of us had to drive to your apartment to fix it for the next 5 times and so on. And people would give us like, the food was really terrible in the beginning. They would give us like €5 just for the effort. But nevertheless, it was €25 of monthly recurring revenue for a customer. So we did for like 10 people. So, okay, we had €250 coming into the bank every month. But it did prove that there was like this first group of people, which weren't our friends and family. So we reached out to other people who were willing to give it a try, who gave us a lot of feedback, really told us like, this is what the product should do. This is my problem. This is my problem. Make a solution for this. And we start making the product, the meals, the application a little bit better. That took us about 12 months. In that 12 months, we had a few customers with a basic prototype that roughly worked. And then we could go to investors like, hey, I don't only have a clear problem. I don't only have, not only have a possible solution, but I also have like a handful of people who are willing to use it, even though it looks and tastes pretty terrible. Now let's talk into how can we really make this a real business.
Hey, Jeroen, can you say that those first customers, I mean, they actually enjoyed being part of that, development of the product? Like those were like real early adopters, right?
Yeah, it was really fun to see, because I still remember like I said, the product worked for 5 times in a row, and then you had to drive up to those people's houses and start fixing the product for the next 5 times. That should take about 5 minutes, but we were there with those people for at least 1 or 2 hours every time, and they had, oh, good that you're here. I've made a list with comments, and they give you like 3 pages of comments like, I thought the chicken was too much like this. It would be cool if the product could do that. And they basically started giving us the roadmap for the actual product to be built, which turned out to be quite different than what we envisioned at the Balaton Sound Festival or the Hackathon Festival. So that we really knew like, okay, there is a problem. This could be a solution. Let's move on it.
So basically, when you started developing this prototype, some entrepreneurs could say, okay, I won't build the electronics immediately, but I will more focus on the design, try to get a nice design, print it in 3D or whatever, and try to fake the concept or just see if people like the product. Was that something you wanted to do, or you just said, no, design, we don't care about design, what we want is that people, cook real meals?
Eat.
Cook is step 1, eat is step 2.
So cook for 6 times in a row would be like quite the accomplishment in those days. But no, ideally we would have the two, like a nice design and a good functionality. But we, when we did the math, it showed that, okay, nice design is going to be really costly, and we don't have any funds because, we're just 23-year-old guys with no life savings and so on. But what we did do is we made a mock-up on paper. So we actually were able to show people like, hey, this is the product that it's going to be. I know this is, it doesn't look very nice, but we want to take it to the next step and use the functionality of the product you see here, which is really ugly, but it kind of works with this really cool design. Is this something you would like? And then again, they would tell us like, okay, why is it white? Why isn't it black? Why is it 3? Why isn't it 2? So they really helped us a lot with that as well.
Yeah, but would investors only invest based on the design? I mean, I know that you said you need both, but I think that an investor, he doesn't even need, at this stage, doesn't really care about the design. He really wants to know, like, are those customers willing to, try again and again, right? It means, I mean, if those are not your friends and family, right, it means that, boom, there is something there. I think that's pretty precious.
Yeah, and usually we meet many entrepreneurs who say like, hey, I need this mock-up or I need this 3D stuff so that I can show it to an investor together with my pitch deck, and they will give me the initial 150K to reach the milestones. Does that work in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think if you have a good designer and some capital to deploy, you can always get the design right. But no matter how much capital you have, you don't necessarily will get the product market fit right. So even if we would have this really cool design from the beginning on, but everyone would say, cool, I don't care. Okay, then you just have a really cool mock-up. But I think what's important in this stage is a bit of the duality between, which still is today, I think, but on a different level, is the mantra like numbers tell, stories sell. So you need those first numbers coming in, like even if it's €25 monthly recurring revenue per customer, which shows like, okay, there is a spark here. Now let's talk about the future. Let's think about the vision. What if the product could look like this? Is, in my opinion, better than having this really cool design. like, hey, this could be it. Okay, is there anyone who cares? Are there any users? I think you need a bit of both.
And Brian,
Yeah.
in,
Hey,
in
one-
the US, you agree with that? Like in the US, can you raise money just based on the design, or will you actually need like some numbers?
It depends. It depends a lot. The fact that Jeroen, you had this sort of family background in the food business was really in your favor, I think, and I'm imagining that helped you figure out that side of things. We've talked a lot about the hardware so far. Were there any big surprises with the food side and food storage and shelf life of food and that kind of thing?
Yeah, still are today. We're still learning every day about food because, food is quite complicated, especially when you scale up the volumes. I think most people, anyone can make a sandwich or an egg in their home kitchen, but making it on a larger scale with high quality in mind and like having real, honest, pure foods in mind, with all adding crazy additives and so on, preservatives and coloring, whatever, just real food, but on a big scale. It's not that easy as it sounds. It was a good advantage, like a sort of unfair advantage, what investors tend to seek for in early startups, that we had like, okay, I've worked in a food company for over 10 years. My family worked into a food company for 70 years. I know a bit about food. Today, I know a lot more, obviously, but that was something that was really interesting, that we could show like, okay, I'm not only going to make a few chicken tikka masalas in my own kitchen and hope it works out for the next few 10,000 that we have to do. We could also already relate to that background we had, like, I know how to make 10,000, even though today I'm only selling 10.
Brian, how do you
Yeah,
call
that's
that?
a huge deal.
The founder market.
How do I
fit.
call that?
Yeah.
Founder market fit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And you got to look at it like this. There's a lot of big risks with the business that you started. There's a hardware risk. There's customer demand risk. There's all this food stuff we were just talking about. And so what I would see as an investor is that, here's a founder who has this qualification, clearly knows that side of it, but is making 3D prototypes with a 3D printer. That's de-risking that side of it for me, is like, will this founder actually figure out how to create this hardware device? And by the way, most founders will not get that far. They won't actually make a prototype. They won't get it in front of customers. As embarrassing as it is to have the, single use, smart oven or whatever, like, that's amazing. Like that really separates you from most founders. And I think that's a huge thing to point out, but that's a big, a big step that you have to take if you want to start a company. It's usually not this hard though. If it's like a SaaS company, it's a lot easier to get off the ground, right?
Yeah, I think it's easier, but I don't know by first-hand experience. It's probably easier to scale the worlds of. It's harder to scale the world. It's easier to scale the world of bits than to scale the world of atoms. We're in the atoms business. But nevertheless, I think that we're really changing a lot for people's life. There's not a lot that more personal and more important than what you're going to eat today, tomorrow, the day after. That's what's really personal for people. So it's a big vision that we have, and I'm really excited to work on that.
So one thing that I want to emphasize, because it is, Get to Market Radio.
Yeah. It is.
It's the efforts that you did and your team did to actually get to market very fast, efficiently, even though you didn't have a real functioning product, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's critical, because most founders, they're going to wait to get that product. They're going to wait to not be ashamed anymore of their product before going to customers. And the hardware stuff is indeed difficult, but I don't think it's as difficult as believing that now it's time to go to your customers, go there with your shitty thing that doesn't really work, right? Knowing that you're going to feel like so stressed out about the way your customer mind reacts, right? I mean, there must be stories, man, where you was like sweating, like, what is happening right now? Like, I feel so bad about what I just did. Like, what are those customers actually going to think about me and my product?
Yeah, definitely.
But if you don't do this, you don't succeed. You don't go further, right? And that's something I want to applaud. And that's why I believe that you were so successful today.
Yeah.
We went through all that things. And to us, the Get to Market Radio, that's really about those stories. Right? This is really what we want to focus on. So thanks really much for sharing that story with us.
Yeah, so basically the prototype you had, which was good enough to get the first 5, 10 or 15 customers maybe, it was super ugly, didn't work well, but it was all about the value. Is it beautiful? No. But is that the real value of that product? No. The main value is it helps you cook a meal, a healthy meal, right? So the value was there, the design was not there, but people don't buy a design, they buy a value. So that's number one.
At this stage of the company.
At this stage, yeah, definitely. For the first customers. That's like, success number one, because not everybody would be ready to do that. And success number two is that you have very good background. So you are engineers, you go to university, MBA, whatever, and then you end up doing that kind of Tupperware events where you go to people's home and you're like, hey, let's taste this new, I don't know, this new steak with this new salad, etc. Yeah, it's frozen.
Oh, I didn't know this. Can we hear more about that? I didn't know this was. So this is like a growth hack essentially you did.
Yeah, well, in the very beginning, to get our first customers, we had zero money in the bank, so we also had zero marketing budget. So our customer acquisition cost was zero. So that's a really scalable business. But we had to find a way to get the product out there. Nevertheless. I also have a bit of background in sales, so I used to work for a short time for a B2B SaaS company where I did business development. So I naturally fell back to the only thing I know is hardcore sales. So what we did is we had a look into our personal emails and what are the people's in the last 20 years, who did we ever send an email? We gathered those email addresses. Point out this was back in the day when GDPR wasn't as strict and so on, but it was all people that we knew back then, and we started sending them emails like, hey, I have this cool new product, are you free next Wednesday 8 p.m. By the way, if you have 2 friends who would like a free meal and like a really cool show about a guy trying to show you a product that probably won't work, I'll be at your door at 8 p.m. So I think that we did like easily between 700 and 1,000 of these demonstrations over the course of a year. We
700.
So every night, each of the founders had 1 or 2 customer demos, as we call them. So we did a lot of driving from anywhere in the country to the Netherlands and so on, showing up with like 3 boxes of food and a device that we had to tell like the host of the party, like, is there a quiet place that I could please assemble it? Because if people see how I assemble it, it's over. And basically, we showed the device. We had like a 5% success rate and so on. But nevertheless, if you have 1,000 demos, that's already 50 customers. So those were like then the early adopters. And that's how we got started.
Those are people that, already converting to leads, right? So based on cold emailing, pretty much. You knew them a little bit. You were able to generate that much demand. Those leads, which by the way is already a sign of there is a demand for that product.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
which makes me think that could you have tested this even before having a product? Like, hey, we have this thing. Would you be able to? Could I come to you like 8 p.m. this Wednesday? And then, because you don't have the product then, you can say, oh, you know what, can we schedule for another time. In the meantime, you would have been able to validate that demand. Some idea.
So basically, you start with friends and family, asking questions, would you use that, etc. You get the prototype, probably you gave it to a couple of friends who tested it, beta testers. And then you say, okay, now let's go out of my personal network and try, close network, and try to get real people I don't necessarily know. And then you go into your email address book, and then you select people to send cold emails, and you try to book these demo events, right?
Yeah.
Did they have to pay for that?
No, it was completely free. They had to pay with their time, so they had to listen to me or my co-founders yab on for at least 2 hours, like about all the advantages of the product. which was something quite different because then we were like really into, you have a problem, this is a list of 35 solutions. People don't really care, you know, they just want like the 1 or 2 solutions and they want to hear the story and so on. So more marketing than sales. I think maybe having known that, we could get the conversions up to like 6% or 7 instead of 5. But yeah, that's how we started out.
And what was the call to action at the end of the event?
Yeah, the call to action was like also a pretty fun one. Like, can I have your money now and I will give you the device in 1 year? Because we didn't have any funds back in the day to really start it. So it was like a pre-sales of the product. So we asked people like, hey, is this are you willing to step into our story? Give me the money now in pre-sales, and if I gather like 500 or 1,000 people, then I will actually start up the manufacturing. So yeah, even though how much people would like the solution, they were still looking at this like 20-year-old something guy yabbing on about whatever, like this really ugly product that did work functionally, but we did have a really cool picture of the design. And in the end, I would ask them, can I get, I think it was like 300 euros right now, and I will give you the device in 1 year, and I'll give you a 20 euro discount for the waiting time. So that's also why the conversion rates weren't very high, but we needed to have that strong push and really show investors that we were talking to at that point in time, hey, even without nothing in my hands, no product, no marketing, no nothing, I can still get 100 crazy people so far into believing into the product that they're actually willing to pay for it and wait for it for an entire year. There is something here. Now help us get this off the rails.
And that, for me, that's the definition of an entrepreneur. That's, you know, so many, you have this, everything that's related to the project, like strategy, brainstorming, business model canvas, whatever. You have the product, okay, but then you have all these like psychological obstacles, like, you know, presenting a bad product. You know it doesn't work, but you still do it. You're an engineer, man. You could, if you work like in a big company, you can make a lot of money, right? And then you say, no, every day I'm going to do demos. I don't care. I don't want to
drive millions of, you know, to go to all those customers.
That's crazy. And then you ask them for money while there is nothing to sell, which is even more complicated. And, you know, we meet so many entrepreneurs, and most of the time, unfortunately, they're not ready to do that. And that's what makes the difference between people who fail, but we really want to help these people by telling that kind of stories, and then people who succeed. And it's fucking complicated to succeed.
It's pure execution, right?
Yeah,
it's like, how do I execute this? I have my constraints, right? Yeah. How do I navigate through all those constraints and achieve my KPI? But now getting back to the fundraising, right? You know, you have two options. You have a beautiful pitch deck, beautiful designs, right? Everything is nice, beautiful story. And then you have Mealhero. They come to you and they say, I mean, we have a basic PowerPoint template. I don't know if you had that or not, but we had that story. We went to 700 people. And we had 5 or whatever the conversion rate was that actually paid pre-sale. I mean, that's okay. So tell us more about those pitches. What were the reactions of those investors?
Wait, before we move on to the investors, do you have like an email to show us or something like that regarding these first clients you acquired?
Yeah, I can show you like an email, like one of the first emails that we ever sent to customers to really get the thing about potential customers. Because what's also good to know is that we went to like roughly, let's say 1,000 people. That means that we had to send emails to 20,000 people. So it's quite challenging to keep that list up and going. But you know, if you said no, we would continue to keep on sending you emails. But yeah, let me just share my screen real quick maybe. I think this is one of the first emails. It's in Dutch though. But it's basically like a blueprint of cold email that works. So it roughly translates into hey, I saw that you have a really cool business function in your job. I can imagine that you have a busy job, a busy lifestyle, which is one of the problems we try to solve. Together with my best friends, I started a business. Can I give you some more information about the product? It's totally fine if you want to say no. And then co-founder, CEO, those types of things in there as well. So I think that those were like the first emails that we sent. We had like 10 different versions of this email, which we constantly tweaked. Like if I say this word, if I say that word, does it work better? Does it make it worse? Are conversion rates better? So that was a pretty important KPI in the beginning. So that's how we started out then.
And did you send like the first couple of thousand emails like manually, or did you put everybody like in a list on MailChimp and then send mass emails?
Yeah, I think like so that's probably something that I wish we could have done different. In the beginning, we were so excited. We were just like, okay, Gmail, 2 computers, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, and so on. Until then, one of my co-founders, Anton, with the passion for making hard things easy, told me like, why don't you just get MailChimp or HubSpot, and I'm sure you can get it for free. And so I sent an email to HubSpot like, can I get it for free? And we're like, yeah, sure, you can have it for free. And so like the entire thing then took about 5 minutes. But yeah, it was like a good lesson to learn.
But do you think you would have learned so much about how you can iterate and improve this email to get more conversion if you use like HubSpot from day one?
I don't think so, because it was more or less like a conversation with our customers as well, potential leads. They've replied back and were oh, I'm actually not that busy. It sounds great, but I don't know. My kitchen is my kitchen countertop is so crowded already. I don't have a freezer. I don't have a smartphone. It was still 2015. Like all those types of things that came back and really gave us a good understanding of what is the problem? Is the problem really people with busy jobs? No, it's people who have a busy life, no matter what the reason is. So they really give us a lot of insight. So I once heard this quote from like the Airbnb founder, like in the beginning you need to do things until it really hurts, and then when it really starts to hurt, then you need to automate it. And sending 1,000 emails per day really hurts. But yeah, it learned us a lot.
That's basically the mindset. Yeah, very important. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean. I'm still thinking about these demos you did and all these demos. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so back to the 700. Yeah. Man, that's great.
That's wild.
If I was an investor, I would give you money
just for that.
Just for that, because
exactly.
I like some pity investment.
Yeah, no, because let's now hear about the way that they react to that story, those investors, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, indeed. I think like our first investors were people who really saw the value of the product, but also probably saw like, okay, these guys must really want it, because who's crazy enough to work a full day's job at a normal office, then leave at 5 p.m., gets in their car and goes to give 2 or 3 demonstrations for what exactly is a product that probably won't work, and 10 people looking at you like, what are you doing here? So that was quite hard. To get back at your question, like the reactions of those first investors were mostly, I think we weren't necessarily talking to the right investors. Most of the time, investors are pretty, in my personal experience, B2B SaaS driven, and those were like also the investors that we were talking to. But you really need the right investor, like investor founder fit, I would say, is really important. So in the beginning, it was a lot of, wow, this is really complicated, guys. Most companies just build an app. You have a software engineer. Wouldn't you rather build an app? Apps are really cool. Build an app. But we were really convinced this is a big problem. It needs a big solution. So a bit of perseverance in there. The very first investors were mostly, okay, I'll only give you investment once you have revenue and once you have a product and so on. So we need to hack our way through. But once we showed like, okay, with this basic product, we can really do something great, things start to be a lot easier. In the beginning, we thought a lot about, okay, what's the valuation? How much money do we need? And so on. Looking back at it, it probably wasn't that important. I think it was way more important to get the right investor into the company, to get the right experience, and was way more valuable than the metrics and so on. Because when you're talking pre-seed round and so on, it doesn't really matter that much. I think it's way more important to get the right people in.
Okay, how do you? So the first investors you reached out was like, people you knew, some people talked about. How did you identify the first ones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the very first investor that I spoke to was via email because we couldn't get a meeting no matter how many cold emails we send out. It was also I think I just probably typed in like venture capital Belgium and I started sending to, and then you see like we do minimum checks of 10 million euros. So I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I get like this friendly reply like, although we think it's really great that you already have 100 euros in monthly recurring revenue, we're going to pass for now. But it was fun because then 2 or 3 years later, you can tell those same investors like, okay, revenue's up quite a bit now. So we started looking there. We started talking into our network like, hey, what is an investor? Because when you're still a young company, yeah, you see Sequoia Capital and so on, but that's not going to happen. Yeah, it's like an investor when you're not into the scene yet, kind of seems like this mythical creature, right? Like, they're there, they do deals, but who are they and where do you find them? So it was a bit of mouth to mouth. That we start to find those first investors, and once you have investor number 1, it's way easier to get investor number 2 and so on. So we spent a lot of time on getting the first right investor on board, and then things went not easy, but definitely easier.
In the US, what especially for a physical product like you had, crowdfunding would be a big way to kind of validate that there's customer demand for this. So a Kickstarter. There's other kinds of new crowdfunding launching in the US. Was that option available to you early on?
Yeah, well, we actually did a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign because that was like a big concern for our initial investors. Okay, you have 20 customers, all good and well, and I want to see you get to 100. And so then we did a Kickstarter campaign. We started doing the demos and like full speed ahead. And that was like a big driver then to get later investors on board to tell them like, hey, someone gave me like this tiny bit of investment. Look what I did with it. I got like, I think it was 80,000 euros, which is 100,000 US dollars, something like that. Of people just saying, never seen the product, like, yeah, I want it and I'll pay you also 1 year in advance. So that really boosted the business again and gave us that extra edge into the next funding rounds. Awesome work.
Maybe, so the Kickstarter, how many did you raise? You said 80,000?
80,000, I think, yeah.
Can we know how much it costs to set up this Kickstarter campaign?
I think like everything together, like marketing, product development and so on, I think it was roughly half of that amount. So it was like around 40,000, which it costs us, also setting up the business, making the food for the demonstrations and so on. So all things considered, we were up 40,000 with the Kickstarter campaign then.
Okay, so basically launching a Kickstarter campaign, we say it every time we meet with the founder, but it's not like, hey, I will post that on Kickstarter and
yeah, it was really hard, the Kickstarter campaign actually, because you tend to see a lot of like unicorn stories on Kickstarter. They just post it online and boom, there's like 1 million orders, but it was really hard. It takes a lot of preparation. We started preparing our crowdfunding campaign. It was a product-based crowdfunding campaign, so we didn't crowdfund equity. At least 6 months ahead, telling people like, hey, it's gonna launch. Can I count on you? Because the minute we launch, I'm gonna call you to make the deposit. So it's really hard. It's something that it's not like a magic pill or a silver bullet to launch the business. If done right, it's a good platform, but it's more or less a sales and marketing platform, I would say.
So the people you got during the demos, you sent them to the Kickstarter to just put money on the campaign, okay. So what I wanted to talk about is the hard stuff, but I think we got the point about what was hard in your startup journey. Okay, we talked about it. So what are the things that if you had to do it again, you wouldn't do it the same way, or at least not do it at all?
Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't do it. I would definitely start doing it again. I would probably do it roughly the same way. That's a really good question. I think you learn something every day, like literally. Even today, what we probably would do different is that we would try to get to the market even faster. I think that a lot of people, like in the very beginning, told us like, "Wow, you're really gonna showcase this product?" Like, yeah, sure, we're gonna showcase it, but I think we probably should have done it like a little bit faster. Also, today, sometimes, as you kind of grow the business, you lose a bit of that. Let's just launch it, just ship the product, because there's a lot more people depending on it. You got a bigger team. You have a lot of brand equity, brand awareness, and so on. You have a sort of quality stamp that you need to live up to, and it kind of slows things down sometimes. So that's still a bit of a tricky balance. Like, when do we launch too soon? When do we launch too late with new features and products? So looking back, I would probably push a few features on to the market earlier on, not too early, but like a few days earlier.
I like this answer. That's a good mindset. Okay, great. Well, Jeroen, I think we got like ton of value from this chat. I don't know if there is any question left. Maybe Brian.
I think that was literally like the perfect answer to end for Get to Market Radio, right? I mean, get to market faster. I love it.
And we didn't prepare, so thank you, Jeroen, for the answer.
Okay,
great. So that was it for the first episode of Get to Market Radio. So what we'll try to do with the team is try to, get some quotes from what you said today, Jeroen, and try to have like a conclusion that we will send per email, like a bullet point of the most important things we discussed today. So guys, it was the first episode, so it was an MVP. So don't hesitate to give us feedback, comments, send an email, LinkedIn, whatever. But if it doesn't bring value, tell us it doesn't bring value. If it brings value, tell us what you like, what we could do, what we could improve, etc. And if we see that there is like good reactions, we will host a couple of other shows. If it's pure shit, then we will do something else.
Yeah, we do have a few Belgian companies that are worth, I think, a talk. Yeah. But of course, feedback is important. So please give us that.
All right. That was it for the first episode.
Thanks so much, Jeroen, for your story. It was really awesome. I had a great time. I love the stories. And Brian, thank you as well for joining from the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's breakfast time for you, right?
My pleasure.
Yeah.
So have a good breakfast, and then Jeroen, have a good Mealhero meal.
Obviously.
It's Mealhero time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. See you.
Yeah,
bye.